Welcome back. Well, let's get talking about the FMCG space then. In fact, there are reports which indicate that paint companies, in fact, could see a second round of price hikes soon. Abneesh Roy of Edelweiss Securities joins in to discuss this and what his view is on the paint companies now. Abneesh, I thank you very much for taking the time out. So there is some amount of commentary which has come out from the likes of AkzoNobel, which has, for example, informed dealers that they would be probably looking for a second round of price hikes come the 1st of June. Do you think the market is able to absorb a second round, and what is the quantum according to you?
So I think current raw material scenario is quite inflationary across the board, not just for paint companies. Even for Pidilite, if you see, VAM prices have increased from $800 to $2,000. For paint companies, it is not that inflationary versus, say, Pidilite or a soap player or some of the other segments like tea companies. It is less inflationary. Yes, here also China angle and supply disruptions and all those are happening. So titanium dioxide has gone up 10-15% in the last few months, and it is still inflationary. That's why we are seeing paint companies take price hikes. Now to your question, does it impact demand? I don't think it really impacts demand too much because of few reasons. First is consumer paints his house once in 5 years. So he will not really be benchmarking like supposing he buys a toothpaste on a monthly basis. He will not be doing benchmarking like that for paint company, for paint cost. Second is if I paint my house, only 40% of the cost is paint, 60% is the manpower cost. So that again lessens the total inflation. Third, of course, is it's a very disciplined industry. The entire industry is facing the raw material inflation. My sense is Asian Paints is currently taking only one hike. They took around 2.8% hike from May 1. What is happening is Asian Paint is very aggressive. So under the new CEO, Mr. Amit Single, he's very aggressive on market share expansion. So what we are seeing is slight difference versus earlier times. Smaller paint companies like Kansai and Akzo are this time taking even earlier hike or maybe even more hike than Asian Paints. This is something which is new. So I would expect Asian Paints to gain market share. Even in FY21, Asian Paints saw a 13% kind of a volume growth, which was well ahead of rest of the players.
Okay.
So Asian Paint is not taking the same level of hike.
All right, Abneesh, the point that you made that when you paint your house, 40% is paint and the larger portion could be a labor. But there must be a labor problem as well on the ground, or that is not the case. Last year, obviously, there was a case in terms of that. And also, if you could tell us, you said Asian Paints has increased prices by 2.8% at the start of May. What has been the the rough range in terms of the increase that other paint manufacturers have taken?
Sure. So Asian Paints is the market leader and they have been slower and lesser price hike this time around. Normally Asian Paint used to take the hike first in the earlier cycles. We had seen that. My sense is Kansai and Akzo have taken slightly earlier hike. Kansai took it a few weeks earlier than Asian Paints. Akzo, I understand, has taken 2 rounds of hike and total hike is coming almost like 7 to 9 or 7 to 10%. It will be weighted average number which we would need to look at, and it will be different across portfolio. Now to a question on the manpower. See, in wave 2, the migrant crisis is not as bad, nowhere near wave 1 migrant crisis. And please remember, in such a migrant crisis in FY21, Asian Paints saw a 13% volume growth. So it's a pent-up demand. People are looking at bigger houses. People are obviously doing work from home. So they need a better hygiene, better look and feel of the house. So that is also something which is driving demand. So I would say manpower availability will not be much of a concern once the lockdown really ends. Now, currently in most states, obviously paint shops are closed and paint demand is very minuscule currently. But all these come back. We have seen that in FY21. It's a pent-up demand. And as people are not spending on vacations, are not spending on very expensive marriages, they are saving that and spending on these kind of costs. Yeah.
Okay, so that's true. So considering that there's enough maybe, for the section which is in fact spending their savings or their retained income on better household items and, home improvement, do you think that paint companies' margins would then not get affected because they're just going to pass through all of the raw material price hikes?
No, paint margins last 3-4 quarters has been extremely high. It is much higher than their average long-term numbers. So I would expect that yes, most companies like to work in a band of margins, because being too much greedy on margins leads to market share loss. Currently, Asian Paint under the new CEO is a completely different company than in its earlier avatar. So I would say Asian Paint will be happy to sacrifice some margins to get market share. So yes, some compression of margins will continue, but on an yearly basis, if you compare FY22 to say FY20, I think still the margins should be reasonably okay. But FY21 was an extremely abnormal year because a lot of costs were not there, a lot of advertising cost was not there, but pent-up demand was really high, and 13% volume growth for the full year. That really speaks that full year the numbers are really good. So I would say some compression in margins on FY21 versus 22 YOY will be definitely there for all the companies, including paint companies.
Okay, get the picture. Asian Paints is going to be aggressive. They're going to go for market share. Some compression of margins is par for the course. But give us your picks, Abneesh, in terms of a pecking order. What are you most bullish on?
So in the broader consumer space, we like Hindustan Unilever, we like Nestle, we like Godrej Consumer, and in the discretionary, we like Asian Paints a lot. So these 4 are our top picks.
Okay, all right, Abneesh, we're going to leave it on that note. Thanks very much for joining in and giving us all of those views with regards to paint companies. So as of now, it is a pass-through in terms of a second price rise hike that we can expect, obviously, because of all of the raw materials, which are especially crude-based, which have been rising. We need to take a break now, but up next, we'll get chatting on the technicals of the market. Stay tuned.